October 3rd, 1995, 10 in the morning. Los Angeles stops. Not all of it, but enough of it that you notice. Offices empty out. Bars fill up. Schools pull televisions into classrooms. 150 million people across the country are watching the same screen, waiting for the same two words. And when those words come, the country splits in half. Not slowly, not gradually. In the time it takes a court clerk to read a single sentence, half of Los Angeles erupts in celebration. The other half sits in silence, staring at the same screen, having watched the same trial, heard the same evidence, and reached completely opposite conclusions. What happened in that courtroom on October 3rd, 1995 was not just a verdict, it was a mirror. And what Los Angeles saw in that mirror was something the city had spent decades pretending wasn't there. Two completely different experiences of the same institutions, the same police, the same courts, the same system, producing two completely different worlds inside the same city. The O.J. Simpson verdict didn't create that divide. It revealed it. And once it was visible, there was no way to pretend it wasn't real. To understand what the verdict did to Los Angeles, you have to understand what Los Angeles already was when the case began. By 1994, the city was still carrying the weight of what had happened 2 years earlier. The Rodney King beating, the acquittal of the officers who did it. 6 days of fire, 63 people dead, $1 billion in damage, and a relationship between Black Los Angeles and the LAPD that had been damaged so badly that no official statement or policy announcement was going to repair it. The riots hadn't created that relationship. They had exposed it. Decades of occupation-style policing in South Central. Mass arrests that produced almost no charges. A department that had spent years treating Black residents as suspects rather than citizens. And a city that had consistently looked the other way while it happened. By the summer of 1994, the embers of all of that were still warm. The wound had not closed. The trust had not been rebuilt. And into that specific moment, a white Ford Bronco appeared on a Los Angeles freeway, followed by a convoy of police cars, watched by 95 million people on live television, carrying one of the most famous men in America. And everything that had been simmering in this city for 30 years rushed to the surface. Orenthal James Simpson was not just a celebrity. He was something rarer than that. A Black man who had been fully accepted by white America. The Heisman Trophy, the Buffalo Bills. A career as a broadcaster and actor that made him a familiar face in living rooms across the country. He had crossed the line that most Black public figures in America were never allowed to cross. He had been allowed to simply be famous. Not Black and famous, just famous. He had endorsed products. He had hosted television programs. He had built a life in Brentwood, a wealthy, mostly white neighborhood on the west side of Los Angeles, far from South Central, far from the communities that the LAPD had been occupying for decades. O.J. Simpson had spent his career positioning himself outside the conversation about race in America. And then on the night of June 12, 1994, that positioning became irrelevant. His ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman were found stabbed to death outside her condominium in Brentwood, and Simpson became the prime suspect. And everything he had built his public identity on collapsed overnight. Because in the Los Angeles of 1994, there was no such thing as simply famous. Not anymore. Not after Rodney King. Not after the riots. Not with an LAPD investigation and a mostly white prosecution team standing on one side, and the entire history of that department's relationship with Black Los Angeles standing on the other. The trial began on January 24, 1995. It would last 252 days, 150 witnesses, a jury of 9 African Americans, 2 white Americans, and 1 Hispanic American, and wall-to-wall television coverage that turned every moment of it into a national event. America had never watched a trial like this before. Not in real time, not every day. Not with cameras inside the courtroom capturing every expression on every face. The major figures became celebrities. Defense attorney Johnny Cochran, prosecutor Marcia Clark, Judge Lance Ito. The case consumed the country's attention for nearly a year. But in Los Angeles, it felt like something more specific than national entertainment. It felt personal, because the evidence wasn't just about a glove or a timeline or a strand of hair. It was about the LAPD. The detective who found the key piece of evidence, a bloody glove on Simpson's property, was named Mark Fuhrman. He testified early in the trial, denied under oath that he had used racial slurs in the past 10 years. The defense team believed he was lying, and then they found the tapes, recordings Fuhrman had made in 1985 for an aspiring screenwriter. 13 hours of conversations, in which Fuhrman described police brutality against black suspects, described evidence planting as standard practice, and used a specific racial slur 41 times, the same slur he had just denied using under oath. When the tapes came out, Fuhrman was recalled to the stand and asked directly whether he had planted or manufactured evidence in this case. He invoked his Fifth Amendment right, the right not to incriminate himself. He would not answer. For Black Los Angeles, that moment confirmed something they had already known, that the LAPD was not to be trusted, that its officers lied, that the system that was supposed to produce justice had been compromised at its foundation. For white Los Angeles, the tapes were a complication, a distraction from what they saw as overwhelming evidence of guilt. A device used by a skilled defense team to muddy the water. Two cities, same courtroom, different trials. October 2nd, 1995. The jury begins deliberating. 252 days of testimony, thousands of pieces of evidence, 150 witnesses. The jury reaches its verdict in 3 hours and 45 minutes. Judge Lance Ito delays the announcement until the following morning. And on October 3rd, 1995 at 10 in the morning, Los Angeles holds its breath. The clerk reads the verdict, not guilty, on both counts. In black neighborhoods across Los Angeles, people pour into the streets, cheering, embracing, passing drinks. A teenager named Jasmine Canick, living near Compton, remembered it clearly. Everybody was running out of their house screaming and happy. At Howard University, students ran into the hallways, jumping and celebrating. The reaction was not about O.J. Simpson, the man. Many of the people celebrating privately believed he was probably guilty. The polls said so. Even in black communities, the numbers showed doubt. But the verdict wasn't being celebrated as a declaration of innocence. It was being celebrated as something else. As the first time in the memory of an entire generation that the system had bent in their direction. That a black man with a good lawyer had beaten a system that had never once bent for the people cheering in those streets. Professor Charles Ogletree of Harvard Law School said it directly. The celebration was not a lack of concern about the victims who were murdered. It was recognition of the many black men who had gone through that justice system without good lawyers, who found themselves going to jail rather than going home. While in offices and classrooms across the city, white Americans sat in silence, or in tears, or in fury. 75% of white Americans believed Simpson was guilty. They had watched the same trial, seen the same evidence, and arrived at a verdict that felt not just wrong, but incomprehensible. The gap between those two reactions was not about O.J. Simpson. It was about everything that had built up in Los Angeles before he ever entered that courtroom. The verdict didn't create the divide. It made the divide visible, and visible in a way that couldn't be explained away. Because it wasn't a riot. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't an act of desperation or violence that could be dismissed or contained. It was a reaction to a legal verdict, watched by the entire country at the same moment. And the reaction split perfectly along the line that Los Angeles had been pretending didn't exist. Two communities, two completely different relationships with the same institutions, the same police, the same courts, the same city government, producing two completely different experiences of what justice meant. White Los Angeles had largely trusted the LAPD, had seen the department as protection, had not personally experienced what Black Los Angeles had experienced at its hands. The Furman tapes were a shock to them, a revelation of something they hadn't known. For Black Los Angeles, the Furman tapes were not a shock. They were confirmation of something that had been true for decades, that the department planted evidence, that its officers lied under oath, that the system was not built to protect them the way it protected everyone else. The verdict in the Simpson case was the first time that institutional distrust produced a concrete, visible, nationally televised result. And white America didn't know what to do with it. Some called it jury nullification, a racially motivated refusal to convict a guilty man. Others called it the first time the scales had balanced, just once, in one case, for one defendant. But the argument underneath both reactions was the same argument, about who the system was built for. And who it wasn't. 30 years later, the questions the Simpson verdict raised have not gone away. They have simply attached themselves to new names, new cases, new verdicts, each one dividing the country along the same line, each one producing the same split screen of celebration and disbelief. Because the divide the verdict exposed was not created by the verdict. It was created by the city, by the LAPD, and the decades of decisions it made in South Central and Watts and East Los Angeles, by the institutions that treated one part of the city as a community to be served and another part as a problem to be contained. The Simpson trial put two versions of Los Angeles in the same courtroom. One version where the LAPD was the institution that protected you. One version where the LAPD was the institution you had learned you could never fully trust. And when the verdict came down, each version responded exactly as you would expect it to, given everything that had happened before, given everything that had built up over 30 years, given the riots and the beatings and the mass arrests and the Furman tapes and every decision that had ever been made by people who would never live in South Central. The verdict was not a surprise. It was an outcome, the logical conclusion of everything Los Angeles had built and refused to rebuild. One verdict, two cities, and the line between them drawn so clearly that the entire country could finally see it. Some of them for the very first time. Which part of Los Angeles history should we uncover next? Drop it in the comments.